If you do something good, oh, it's easy. Oh, it's easy for her. Mum's in number 10, isn't it? If you do something wrong, oh dear, I mean, honestly, should know how to behave better than that, really. So it can be a no-win situation. If you've got eggshell sensitive feelings, then go to your doctor and get a prescription.
This is Matt Chorley from Times Red, joined today by Margaret Thatcher, who needs basically no introduction because everybody knows that your mum was Margaret Thatcher. So what we want to do today was explore what's it like when your mum is running the country. And first of all, I should say happy birthday, congratulations. 70 this year.
Yes, please don't mention it.
I won't mention that. I will gloss over that. But there's a good opportunity to sort of look back on what it's like if your mum or your dad is running the country. So I suppose let's wind right back then to your childhood. When did you first realise that your mum, Margaret Thatcher, was kind of a big deal?
Well, a big deal, not necessarily, but she got into Parliament as an MP when I was 6 years old. And I remember sort of boasting to my schoolmates, my mum was in the House of Commons, they have green benches. In the House of Lords, they have red benches. All of my friends went, what? And also, one of my school outings was to go up Big Ben. You walk up the steps inside, then you walk around behind the clock face and that sort of thing. So she was an MP. When did it get to the stage when she was really in the public eye? I think when I was a student, a law student, she was Secretary of State for Education. And this was definitely tricky because students on the whole don't like the holder of that job, and she was no exception. So my colleagues at London University would say, okay, we're going off to demonstrate against your mum. Can you just remind us where her office is and this sort of thing? So I think that was splashdown, Matt, if I may describe it like that. And then, of course, she was leader of the opposition for several years, 75 to 79, let me get it right, and then Prime Minister. So it was a sort of running in period.
And what's that like? Because particularly when you're a student, everyone basically finds their parents a bit embarrassing. In one way or another, you want to rebel against them. Did you ever join those? I mean, the ultimate rebellion would be joining the chants of Thatcher, Milk Snatcher and all of that. Did you ever join the protests?
No, I didn't, and I didn't take a lot of student friends home because I didn't feel it was very fair for my mother around the Sunday lunch table in her own home to have to defend her own policies, if you see what I mean. I've always said if you've got a famous parent, Matt, it's not, you are not famous, it's second-hand fame, it's the parent who's famous. And if you've got a parent who's famous in politics, as opposed to sport or telly or showbiz or tycoonery like Elon Musk, it's quite different in politics because everyone has a view. And they are inclined to tell you their view. Because so you're sort of blotting paper for voters' opinions. And I remember my father, I was his biography, and he was in the same boat. He was the husband, Mr. Maggie Thatcher. And I remember him saying, it's not everyone who wants to talk to you who actually makes sense. And that's true, because people say, Carol, I think your mum's doing a lousy job in number 10. Bring back national service. And you have to listen to all of this, Matt. And you can't say, excuse me, take a long walk off a short plank, because whoever's telling you might decide to vote for someone else.
And yet you have no agency over doing anything about it. You just have to absorb it.
Yes.
And then nod politely and walk off. And what was it like growing up in the 50s and into the 60s? With your mum juggling, I mean, actually, even to have a working mum at all was quite unusual. To be a politician, juggling constituency and parliament and a family, how did you do with juggling all of that?
I think she did a brilliant job as a working mum. Quite often, visits to the constituency on a Saturday, I probably saw her open a lot of Christmas fairs and bazaars and that sort of thing. But don't forget, hours in Parliament, she didn't turn up a lot in the evening because votes are often at 10 o'clock and so on. I think I look back and admire the way she juggled it. You're quite right, in those days, I think I was probably one of a handful of children with a working mum in my class at the time.
Did you enjoy the usual family things? Birthdays, holidays, Sunday lunch, Christmases, driving lessons, the things that your friends were doing? Or did you feel like you missed out on some of those normal family life?
I don't feel I missed out, but for instance, Saturday, which was probably a traditional family day, was not in the Thatcher household because my mother was often in her constituency because that's what you do as an MP, and my father was a rugby football referee, so he was off blowing his whistle foul. So Saturday, when everybody else was doing family outings, was not the same in the Thatcher household, but there were lots of other things we got to. I remember my excitement at going to the opening of Parliament or a few things like that. So I've always said it swings and roundabouts.
So then let's jump ahead then to 1979. By this point, your mum is the leader of the opposition. Clearly an amazing sort of political time with the Callaghan government on a knife edge for months and months and months. When did you start thinking, blimey, she might actually become Prime Minister?
Well, obviously, if you get to be leader of the opposition, there's a chance. Well, no, if you win the next election, then you're going to be Prime Minister, aren't you? And actually, after she won, I moved to Australia, which I was going to do anyway. And it's sort of mission creep. If you've got, as I said, a parent as leader of the opposition, and then they become Prime Minister. And I think you develop quite good shock absorbers, because there's always a crisis.
Yeah. It's interesting that. Did you move to Australia because you just wanted to get as far away from people telling you what you should and shouldn't be doing and all of that?
No, I didn't. I'd intended to move. I'd intended to move to Australia and loved it to bits. I mean, it's a wonderful place to live. But when I came back, don't forget she did 11 years, which is the longest serving Prime Minister last century. I think I realised that some doors open, some doors close, and some shut, if you can see what I mean, if you've got a parent in number 10. And plenty of people want something from you, or they hate you. So it looks easy, like you're walking on eggshells, take the invitation, smile at the flashbulbs on the red carpet if you're invited to some film premiere or something. But it is a bit of a balancing act. First of all, don't do anything to embarrass the famous parent, because otherwise you'll turn up splashed all over the tabloids. For teenagers and young adults, it's not overdoing the cocktails in the disco, and certainly not driving your car into a lamppost, and that sort of thing. I mean, in this century certainly. Prime Ministers got a lot younger. I mean, think of it: Blair, Brown, Cameron. Mr. Sunak today, they're younger, so they've got younger children. And a young child is fine, you just smile and look cute. But when you get to be an adult, it gets a bit more complicated.
It's a bit like being a minor royal. You don't have any role, but you've got to do something, you've got to live your life.
Yes.
But with this sort of expectation that if you step outside the parameters, you'll end up on the front pages.
Well, Matt, you've absolutely, that is the key point. I think you need to realise not everyone is talking to you for your pretty face, your challenging intellect or your sparkling sense of humour. They're talking to you because your mum or dad happen to live in 10 Downing Street. So I think you have to stay grounded. Of course there are privileges. Yeah. I went to dinners at the White House a couple of times. Chequers is a very smart weekender. Yeah. So I can't say that there weren't privileges. You just, I think, you need to have your alarm bells primed as to when you're about to fall in a big black hole.
Take me to a moment where there was a real sort of pinch yourself moment when you suddenly, maybe it was in the White House, or even it's just going into number 10 because so few people get to do that. But when did you think, blimey, this is a bit odd?
I think yo-yoing in and out of number 10 because my parents lived there, so I wasn't going in to see the Prime Minister, I was going in to see my parents. But, and walking up that main staircase, which has got all the portraits of previous Prime Ministers back to Walpole in 1735, that never lost, for me, a little bit of pinching time. My God, I'm here.
Yeah, no, it's interesting.
And we had 3 general elections, which were a bit nerve-wracking. I think I remember there were a lot of crises in the Thatcher years. The Falklands War and the miners' strike and so on. But I think you had to be quite adaptable. And as I said, I do remember my mother saying on one day, I might not be here at 6 o'clock. If this doesn't happen, I might have to resign. And in the flat on top of number 10, which is the Prime Minister's flat, the rest of it is office and entertainment rooms and so on. I thought, oh. And I got some of those gold stars from the local stationers, you know, the ones you get when you're good, when you're 5 years old. And I went round and I put them on everything that was ours. So if we had to move out, then I could say, see this gold star, bung everything in the removal lorry that's got one on. The other thing about politics, you mentioned royals. Well, the royals are in it forever. Politics, you're not in it forever, you see. And the day your mum or dad resigns, you'll find out who your friends actually are, because some of them may never speak to you again.
Everyone obviously knows the famous black door from the outside. What's it like being on the inside? I think even your memoir of it talked about being like a goldfish bowl. What's it like on the inside of the goldfish bowl?
Oh, I think life behind the scenes is always fascinating, isn't it, really? And I do remember one time when I was a journalist in Fleet Street, as it then was, my handbag was stolen in a wine bar. And one of the tabloids said, keys to number 10 might have been stolen. Well, this was ridiculous, because actually there aren't any keys to the famous black, shiny front door, because there's always someone inside to open it. Yeah. So you had to be prepared to put up with, good heavens, don't be so ridiculous sort of things. But no, it was a fascinating insight, and I realised I was incredibly lucky to have had it.
And when you talked about being in, you know, you under strict instructions, anything that happens here, whether it's Chequers or in Downing Streets, is off the record, you can't report it. Now, with the benefit of the passage of time, was there a moment when you thought, oh, this is a good story, and kicked yourself that you couldn't do anything with it?
Oh, I'm sure there were plenty of moments. I mean, during 11 and a half years, don't forget, it wasn't a quiet Premiership. I'm sure there were many. But look, Matt, it is back in the mists of last century, man.
Did you share your mum's politics? Because I mean, lots of people have different politics to their parents.
I'm not an especially political person. People often ask me, well, do you want to go into politics? No, thank you. One is enough. One is enough. And did we talk about politics? Quite frankly, if my mother, when she was Prime Minister, wanted to talk about politics, she could find something someone with more to keep their ears apart than her daughter. And I mean, obviously, there were a lot of political lunches on Sunday lunch at Chequers was, as you might imagine, stocked full of politicians. So if you were sitting next to a cabinet minister, you get chapter and verse on his portfolio and that sort of thing. My mother was very strict about that, because I was a journalist at the time. If you say anything that you hear in this house, you don't blab to your journalistic colleagues, you won't be coming again. And when I look back on that 11 and a half years, I think how extraordinarily lucky I was. It really was a golden thread in the rich tapestry of life.
You talked about doors opening, doors shutting. What about the door of the cupboard that Robin Butler shut you in? Robin Butler, your mother's principal private secretary.
Yes, I know exactly who he is.
Had to hide you in a cupboard because you were wearing jeans. Is that right? I think he said it once.
Oh,
maybe you didn't even realise that was what was happening.
No, I might not have realised. Thanks very much. I probably as thick as you think I am. I do remember I was invited to a rather posh dinner, and my mother had been given a rather sort of floaty evening dress that wasn't really her style, and she didn't wear it. So I thought, well, I'll wear it. Why not? And I got a message saying, I don't mind you borrowing my evening dress, but you're wearing it back to front. This thing had lots of buttons, which I assumed, I mean, who was going to do them up if they went down the back? And this was obviously designed for someone who had a costume mistress or something. So I stuck them down the front.
And that was all. And when you talk about it sort of coming to an end, again, these things, happen slowly and then they happen very quickly.
Yes.
There are lots of events, Geoffrey Howe's speech and so on, sort of led up to it. When did you realise that this extraordinary ride might be coming to an end?
Might be coming to an end. I think after 10 years, you see, the speculation was, 10 years is quite an anniversary in any walk of life. 10 years in number 10 is sort of a landmark anniversary. When's she going to go, this sort of thing. And then, as you say, it sort of piled up. And I think I learned the night before that she was going to resign, someone told me. And I thought, well, that's it. You know, it has to come to an end sometime. I think I was very saddened by probably the nature and the treachery involved of the people in her own party and so on.
There was this leadership challenge brought about by Michael Heseltine. She didn't win, she didn't lose the first vote, but she didn't win it by enough.
Yeah.
And then she made this, lots of people said it was a mistake. She asked the cabinet individually whether or not they supported her. And they all sort of said, well, of course I would, but it's the others that won't. And it became sort of clear. I think,
look, it was a long time ago, and 11 and a half years is a very long innings. She was the longest serving Prime Minister last century, leader to win 3 consecutive general elections, and to sort of paraphrase her words, actually you don't go on and on and on. You know, the shutters do come down on you eventually.
Did you speak to her about it in that moment? Was she upset by it, or was she as stoical and accepting of it?
I think she was sort of kind of busy. She had a very big speech to make in the House of Commons the following day, and then there was simply a question, like everyone who's moving house, you've got to get out in a hurry.
And how does she adjust to life outside Downing? I mean, we've obviously got a particular problem at the moment with what you do with former prime ministers, because we've got quite a lot of them.
Well, there've been several in a quick succession. I think it depends how old you are when you're out of office. As I mentioned earlier, we've got prime ministers seem to have got younger. So if you get out at a relatively young age, like you're not at retirement time, then what you do with them is different. I think she was, well, it's a long time ago, isn't she? Was mid-60s. I think it was an almighty shock. And I remember one of her detectives, because she still had protection afterwards, saying that they used to avoid driving down Whitehall, for instance, because if they didn't turn into Downing Street, which they didn't because she was no longer Prime Minister, she'd sort of look up and say, why haven't I gone home? Yeah. So look, it was an almighty shock. It was an almighty adjustment for her.
And did she also find, as you did, that's when you really discover who your friends are, the people who were just, you know,
oh, sure.
You stop being useful to people.
Oh, sure. And also in those days, I can't say now, there was a switchboard. Okay, and this is pre-mobile phones, to state the obvious. So you didn't die on anything. You picked up the phone and say, I want to speak to Bloggs or the Foreign Secretary or my secretary or whatever. And you were put through. So I remember going to see her after she'd left. And there were sort of post-its all over the place because you had to write down people's phone numbers because you didn't know them. Because for years...
Because you didn't have the switchboard.
And no switchboard, you see. So there's some sort of little things, if you like.
And how did you... I mean, there's a sort of a world of Margaret Thatcher, which is so detached from being your mother. In fact, even detached from being the person, the person who gets quoted in speeches. Margaret Thatcher would have thought this, Margaret Thatcher would have done that, in the spirit of Thatcherism. Does that bear any relation to the mother that you knew?
Oh, I think there was a private person, and of course there was the politician. Matt, I think, but I'm astonished now. Where are we now? She left in 1990. How often she's mentioned? Yeah. There's a picture of her in the paper about Thatcherism and whatever. So her legacy, I mean, is extraordinarily enduring, whether or not you agree with her politics or not. And, I mean, everyone was pretty scared of her, or a lot of people were pretty scared of her. I remember getting into a black cab in Whitehall, and the taxi driver said, oh, Carol, hello. And he said, picked someone up the other day I did. Been in to see her, he had, still shaking he was. so this Iron Lady thing, this reputation almost was really sort of magnified as the years went by.
Were you scared of her? Did she give you the Iron Lady handbagging treatment?
No, I don't recall getting handbagged, no.
And what about the Iron Lady, the film, the Meryl Streep film and The Crown and so on, which you've been depicted in as well as her? How do you feel about those depictions?
Matt, I tend not to see, in fact, I haven't seen them. And if someone asks me, what did you think of it? I just say, I haven't seen it yet. which doesn't imply that I don't want to see it because I don't want to see it. I have my own memories. I was my father's biographer, and that's good enough for me.
What about, how did he cope with being, you were the child of the Prime Minister, he was the husband of the Prime Minister, the first ever husband of a Prime Minister. How did he cope with that playing second fiddle, actually in a world where, you know, the man normally played the first fiddle?
I think Denis Thatcher was a quite remarkable individual. He came from a generation where love and loyalty were everything, and he was never Mr. Maggie Thatcher. He always remained himself, even though he was the consort to Britain's first woman Prime Minister. He was very discreet. I remember him saying, "Whales don't get killed until they spout." That was one of his one of the mantras he lived by. And I think he did a truly remarkable job. I remember someone asking me, American journalist, when Hillary Clinton was running for office, well, what happens if Bill becomes the first dude in the White House, or whatever the term he was going to take on? And I said, look, the golf's all right, but some of his other pastimes he might have to give up if he's not going to embarrass the wife.
And I suppose that's the key thing, is not
don't embarrass the wife.
Would you preferred it not having had a mother who ran the country?
I think if you have a choice, which most people don't, I think you want to be the parent of a famous child rather than the child of a famous parent. Because imagine if you're mum and dad of someone who wins Wimbledon or clinches an Oscar, you just reflect in the glory, don't you? But if you're the child, then I think there are more hurdles that can possibly get between you and the finishing line. Who does it well? It's also a bit of a no-win situation, to be quite honest. If you do something good, it's easy. It's easy for her. Mum's in number 10, isn't it? If you do something wrong, oh dear, honestly, should know how to behave better than that, really. So it can be a no-win situation. If you've got eggshell sensitive feelings, then go to your doctor and get a prescription.
And obviously, if we go back, 50 years now, she was leader of the opposition and then went on to be Prime Minister. We've had 2 female Prime Ministers since. Do you think she saw herself as a trailblazer?
She was a trailblazer, but by example, Matt. None of this protesting, joining feminist marches, burning your bras or something. That wasn't her style. Her message was, I've got here, so can you.
It's interesting that she and when you look at, so much has been, there's so much has been written and talked about, she lowered her voice and changed her clothes. Did you think she had to behave like a man in a man's world in order to get there?
No, I think she behaved like a woman in a man's world, and that probably was one of her many strengths.
Yeah. Did you ever think about going into politics yourself?
No, I never thought, Matt, about going into politics myself. One Thatcher was enough.
That's a very good way of looking at it. And just because, how did all of this affect your relationship with your brother, who's a twin, Mark?
Yes.
Did you feel, I think I saw there was an interview, one of her first TV interviews, when you were very small and the two of you sort of slightly gate crashed it. And she said, certainly until these two are a little older, I couldn't take any more political responsibilities. These responsibilities are quite enough. Clearly then things moved on and she did. Did it affect your relationship with your brother, do you think?
Well, my brother is my twin, absolutely correct. He's 2 minutes older. But we were never as close as identical twins. Do you see what I mean? We were more like normal brother and sister. We both went to boarding school at quite a young age, which doesn't sort of foster closeness, if you like, because you don't spend that much time together. So I wouldn't describe us as close. Was it anything to do with having a ma in politics? No. Did you vote for her? I don't think I was allowed to vote, actually, because I lived in Australia.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
So I think the answer to that is, I can't remember, Matt, so I simply can't. It was a long time ago.
Yes, that's fine. I'll let you off that. Well,
Yeah.
Carol, it's been absolutely fascinating to find out what it's like if your mum is running the country. Carol Thatcher, thanks for joining us on Times Radio.
Thank you, Matt.